Serious people who have survived a murder attempt by dumb luck. What's your story? I was 14 and outside in my garage petting my cat. It was November, so it was already dark by 5 p.m. Someone opened the door behind me without me hearing, grabbed me by my ponytail and starting dragging me outside. They hit me on my head with a brick and knocked me out. Pulled me halfway around my house when, I'm guessing this is when, they stabbed me on the left side of my stomach. This must have brought me out of my daze, because my mom said she heard me scream from inside where she and my brother and sister were in the kitchen. They came out the front door and saw me bleeding out on the sidewalk, called 911, had 12 stitches, double layer, a severe concussion, and whiplash. Didn't eat and hardly slept for a week. They never found them. Edit, somehow believed for nearly 14 years I was 15 when this happened, turns out I was 14. Edited to correct. Second edit, thank you so much for my first gold. My sister had this one friend when we were growing up I always got a bad vibe from. She would try to pick on my little brother but I would always stop her. I was 8, she was 10. Once we were at a lake and all the kids were swimming. I swam out to the deep roped off part but I was still little and really shouldn't have. She kept acting weird and getting closer to me making this weird laugh. She pushed me off the wooden pole in the water and I got scared and started to swim back but she came up behind me and pushed me under the water. It didn't click at first that she was trying to drown me but after she aggressively pushed me under the third time I had this crazy moment of clarity. It was like the world slowed down ever so briefly. I relaxed and let myself sink, swam underneath her, and came up behind her. I grabbed her hair and shoved her face into the water, keeping my legs on her back so her body couldn't rise. I waited until her struggling slowed down and let her come up. I waited in the water saying nothing, bracing myself for her retaliation but she just looked panicked and swam back to shore. I told my sister who had already expressed that the girl was weird. We confronted her together and she just looked really dazed. In a monotone voice she said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know it would be like that." It wasn't until I replayed those words in my mind later that I realized what she was saying was, "Sorry I tried to drown you." It wasn't until I was almost drowned myself that I realized how horrible it is to do to someone. You might have taught her empathy that day with your self-defense tactic. You might have saved someone's future life and kept her out of prison. Thank you for the silver. Serious, 3 men drugged me and kidnapped me. I woke up on a floor with one of them tearing my clothes off and my moonboot broken foot. I tried kicking him off with the boot but he started knocking my head into the floor and I passed out. I woke up in daylight in a garbage bin, naked and in a pool of my own blood. I don't know how the fuck I got out of there or how I found the nearest policeman but I then collapsed again. Woke up in a hospital with 52 stitches in my head and 78 in and around my vulva and breasts. Doctor said it was the worst rape trauma she ever saw. They say it's a miracle I'm alive and don't know how I did it. They were never caught. I am a crisis, trauma and PTSD counselor now. They didn't win. Edit, shit, I never thought I'd get a response like this. I woke up and thought my Reddit notifications was on crack. Geez guys, thank you so fucking much for the compliments and support, it's a bit overwhelming tbh and I don't know what to say except thank you, you guys are amazing. Also, thanks for all the bling, that really wasn't necessary but so cool, thanks. To clear up, I am a woman and I am married and I posted in animals being derps a pic of my husband and doggo speak as encouraged so the dad was referring to my husband. Lastly, to the people who say I'm lying or looking for attention, suck my metaphorical balls. Edit 2, thank you once again, hope you guys don't mind but I printed the thread with all the amazing messages and I've added to my notice board. I was exiting a bar once after last call and was with a friend who was a medic. We saw a girl laying in a snow bank near a telephone pole who had just been hit by a car. We ran over and tried to help her, some others were already on the phone with 911 and I, not having any medical training, didn't have anything to contribute but didn't want to just leave, the whole situation was concerning. I turn around for a second and start to hear people screaming. I turn around, a minivan was heading for us, the few people around this woman. They already started to run, but I was too late. He hit me as I was trying to flee, put the car in reverse, ran over me again, and then went forward and run over me a third time. Turns out the guy was high and drunk and got into a fight with the women's BF, whom I bared a strong resemblance to. He thought I was him. Not to throw a pity party for myself, but 9 years later I have a ton of medical issues, and my life pretty much started on a downward spiral since then, but sure, I guess I survived. Edit, for everyone wondering about the guy, an off-duty cop watched the whole thing go down, and copied his license plate number. He was apprehended 20 minutes later and charged with attempted murder, along with many other things. He pleaded out to just 3 years in jail. He had actually killed someone else a few years before drunk driving. How they thought that was appropriate is beyond me. My husband and I live above our place of business. Out alarm company called us at 3 a.m. to say there was a motion detect alert, just one, in a weird place. We assumed it was a mouse but went to reset, check it out. Husband ended up face to face with a burglar who was on his way out the window he had broken. He ran back inside, I called 911 and we heard mad chaos going on in the depths of the building. So much crashing and smashing. Burglar monkey climbed a 10-foot iron gate, bodily smashed through 2 sets of commercial-grade glass doors and was outside again. My husband was like, yeah, fuck this dude, tore after him and tackled him. He got him on the ground and pinned him. Bear in mind the whole time I'm narrating to 911, and chasing around in panties and tank top. I was a bit behind my husband, in the middle of the street about 15 feet away when a minivan squealed around the corner. It was his GF getaway driver. I luckily missed it. I was super focused on reading the license plate, which was one of those cutesy font out-of-state ones and therefore hard to read, but she yelled, "Get the fuck off him or I'm running your bitch over." Then she tried to. The audio and video I had to watch for the trial was horrifying. I had blocked it out nearly completely, and really didn't remember how close it was. She guns the engine at me, I throw my hands up in front of my face when I realize what she's doing and scream, and jump out of the way with inches to spare. He jumped in and off they went. He bled all over my husband, yikes, and eventually the DNA and the partial plate info nailed them. They're both in prison. Addendum, trials suck. ETA, to make this clear, do not do this. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug and it's best to not fight burglars. We definitely both could have died. It was the 3rd time this fucker had broken in and caused $XXXXX amount of mostly uninsured damage and inventory loss, and that definitely contributed to the whole thing. He wouldn't have stopped doing it. He was a pro and was doing upwards of 3 jobs a night most nights, all over the state, for years. Bear in mind the whole time I'm narrating to 911, and chasing around in panties and tank top. And this, my friends, is why I never sleep naked. It's why I sleep naked. No one wants to rest with a rude nude dude, and no amount of jail time will wipe that emotional trauma. EFFs, I just ended the last EP of Got Trash, and I have 67 messages, scared the piss out of me. I was riding in a train across Eastern Europe. I was running low on money, and even though I had been warned that a woman should not travel alone in second-class seating, I did not spring for first class. I was sitting alone in one of the compartments that seats 6. This was also a mistake and a very stupid one to sit alone. Eventually the train stopped and a man got on. He was very drunk. He came into my compartment and I guess thought I looked like his ex-wife. He attacked me. If it were not for the fact that this particular station was the border between 2 countries, I would be dead. Instead, border patrol from both countries were on the train, and while I was unable to scream, the door was open and at least a half a dozen uniformed men jumped him and saved me. I was in the hospital for a little while but recovered. At one point during the trial, one of the cops asked me if I wanted him and his buddies to hold the guy down while I hit him. I thought he was joking. So I said, "No, go ahead, you do it." I was also joking. But it turns out they took it seriously and were about to. I did put a stop to that at least. But they were so offended that someone from their country would attack a young female American tourist. They were furious with him. So many people there depended upon tourism. But it turns out they took it seriously and were about to. I grew up in Ukraine, that guy probably got beat up later lol. No doubt, he got his ass kicked as soon as the trial was over. My supposed best friend decided that my wife and I were too perfect. Therefore it must all be an act and I was obviously abusing her. He was at our house after I made an awesome dinner and we were having fun drinking and singing karaoke. I went to the kitchen to put some glasses away, came back and leaned on the couch with him slightly behind me to the left of me. Then I heard a thunk and felt an amazing amount of pain on the top of my head. He had picked up the whiskey bottle on the table and smashed it into my skull. I was very confused as to WTF was happening. Then the blood started pouring. I didn't want to get blood everywhere, so I went to the kitchen. Dude is pacing back and forth saying weird shit. I thought about my gun, which was close by, but I wasn't thinking quite straight. He left. I had a huge concussion and still suffer side effects from it. My number 2 goal in life is to live longer than that asshat just so I can shit on his grave. Well, my mom got mad at me when I was 20 and I didn't give her money for her birthday, which I'm assuming was to pay off drug dealers of hers, so she stabbed me between the ribs. Ended up getting stuck in the bone and had to get it taken out in surgery. Did you post this on r entitled Parents a while back? Because I remember seeing a story like this. That was me, yes. Well, I hope you're still okay. Throwaway because it got some media. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I was representing this guy that had embezzled almost $500,000 from his business partner. He was looking down the barrel at several years in prison, a bunch of his assets had been seized by the government, was being sued by multiple creditors for north of $2 million, and was in the midst of an ugly divorce and wasn't allowed to see his kids. I was one of 3 lawyers he had, criminal, civil and divorce. He was drinking a lot and using coke. I used to get this incoherent phone calls in the middle of the night that ranged from threats to crying. He came to my office one day and asked for me, but I was in court. My secretary said he was perfectly civil. He then went to his divorce lawyer's office and shot him to death. Got stopped by the police a short distance away and was wounded in a shootout. He would later tell the cops that he had come to my office to shoot me that day and also planned to shoot his civil attorney. I, 18F back then, now 25, was on my way home at night after meeting a friend. My home was just 10 minutes away from the train station. After a few minutes I felt someone following me. No big deal, I thought, just someone else walking home. But I started walking faster. I realized the person behind me was catching up. Weird. In my head I started to make up scenarios of how to defend myself if the person would attack me. Never would I think of this to actually happen. Well, until I felt something on the back of my head, hitting me hard. I went furious. I turned around and attacked the guy. My mind was just full of anger towards this stranger who, what I thought, hit me. We were wrestling until I fell on the ground. He was sitting on top of me, strangling me. I tried to crawl my nails into his eyes as deep as I could, but I started to black out. Suddenly there was this thought in my head, wake up, or you will die. Well, adrenaline kicked in again and I opened my eyes and screamed of the top of my lungs, attacking him again. That helped. He stood up and began to run. I laid there for a few seconds, then I started to run home, still screaming. My mom was already at our door and opened for me because my screams woke her up, or her mother's senses, who knows? She immediately called the cops and they could arrest him on the same night. It turned out that he actually shot me in my head from behind. They assumed that the gun didn't work properly, the bullet didn't penetrate my skull and stuck in there, but as far as I know they never found out why the gun misfired. I'm glad though. He told the cops that he already followed me a few times in the past, but never had the guts to do it. He wanted to kill me and rape my dead body. I know that's a wild story. I have some Swiss newspaper articles as a source if someone cares though. You got shot in the head and then beat his ass. You're a fucking warrior. Serious. I had a guy high on both meth and acid break into my apartment in college. Somehow he was convinced he lost his glasses inside. I am doing dishes when my door gets slammed open. Next thing I know he is behind me. I am being choked to death in my kitchen. As I was losing consciousness I grabbed my roommate's acrylic bong and frantically swung over my shoulder into his face. The bong broke but did nothing as the guy was choking me even harder. So I swung it again. Because the bong broke the first time I was hitting the guy with a 6-inch claw of acrylic glass. Afterward his scalp and part of his cheek were hanging off the side of his face. Essentially I scalped him with a bong. So I chased the guy out of my house. There is easily 2 feet of snow outside. He tries walking back to his house through a cemetery as a shortcut, seriously. And he passes out in the cemetery. The police only found him because I called the cops and they followed the blood and footprints through the snow. And that's the part one was surprised about the most. I hit the guy on his scalp. There isn't much blood in a scalp compared to most the body. But my kitchen was covered in blood. His blood was on my refrigerator, counter, floor and ceiling. It was almost as traumatic to clean it. My roommates were gone for winter break. Thank God my roommate's girlfriend came over and helped me. Now as for the guy. The cops couldn't charge him for 2 days because he needed blood transfusions. He was charged with assault, breaking and entering and attempted murder. And he had drugs on him too, not sure what he got convicted of, but he went to jail for 4 years. Edit, sorry for the confusion over acrylic versus glass guys. I am not the biggest stoner it seems. I guess the bong was just glass not acrylic. If you're from the area I'm from, this will probably sound familiar. But I got absolutely blackout drunk at an end of the year graduation party and ended up having to get taken home early. Later that night another student at the party ended up stabbing and killing 5 people. Turns out he had mental issues, schizophrenia, and thought everyone at the party was a werewolf vampire who threatened his life. He never went to jail but ended up being found non-criminally responsible instead. Definitely remember this one. I live about a block away from where it happened. Terrible thing, I'm sorry you were involved. As lucky as I feel. I don't feel lucky when I think about it. 3 of those kids were people I grew up with. Mine's not extreme by any chance, but a couple of years ago my brother and I went to walk the dog at like 11 p.m. We left through the side gate, live on a corner, and right as we exit I see this weird looking dude at the corner of the footpath walking weirdly towards us. Got bad vibes and told my brother to get the dog and get back inside. This dude is walking kind of side on and hiding something in his hand behind his back. As I'm getting my brother through the gate, the dude says something like, "Oi mate, can I come in? I need a blanket, I'm freezing." I just ignored him and went inside and locked the door. We then get a call from the people who lived 2 doors up. The same dude knocked on their door and their 10-year-old son opened it to see the dude holding a fucking hatchet. Anyway, I'm glad I went with my gut on that one. I was around 20 to 21 years old and walking home at about 3 a.m. after a night out, and I was absolutely plastered from drinking so much. I was about 200 meters from my house when a hooded figure jumped out from behind a bush and immediately had a knife pushing into my stomach as he grabbed my neck and tried pulling me in. Fortunately I was stronger and pulled away. He went to lunge at me with the knife when suddenly he stopped, stared for what felt like an eternity but was probably a second or 2, and then said, "Holy shit, raise your spoon for war, I haven't seen you in so long, my bad mate," and then walked off like nothing had happened. I still don't know who he was to this day. And this is why you always treat others with kindness and respect. Never know when an old acquaintance might try to stab you for an unknown reason. Chilling with the bros drinking at a park. As we drive off to leave, a car coming our way almost hits us. Driver obviously reacts like WTF, and I guess the other car noticed. They turned around and caught up to us at a stop sign. Other driver asked if we had a problem. We told them stop driving like assholes. Then their back window rolls down and 2 guys in the back draw Glocks with drum magazines. We just kind of froze up at first, but then our driver pulled off hastily. Later found out those guys got arrested for shooting someone else that same day. In my late teens, I used to buy my weed from random dudes in the projects, low-income housing. One day we gave some money to a guy named 40. He took it and went inside one of the buildings. We waited in the car for several minutes. We started to think he had taken our money and left. Right about that time, a car full of coked-up white dudes pulled up beside ours. Apparently my friend owed them money. They pointed a gun at him and said that if he had enough money to buy weed, then he could pay them back. I really thought they were going to shoot us and just drive off like it was nothing, and I hadn't even done anything wrong. I thought I was gonna pee my pants. Right about that time, 40 came back out with our weed and an even bigger gun. He scared them away and then we went back to his apartment and smoked a blunt. What a good man. Turns out he was only selling weed because he had a 6-year-old daughter and that was the only way he knew to give her a better life than he had. I babysat his daughter occasionally for the rest of that summer. I really hope she got a decent childhood and that her dad stayed safe and out of jail. TLDR, almost got shot but was saved by random drug dealer who turned out to be a decent fellow. Thanks for watching our video. If you like it, please smash the subscribe and like button to support the channel, so that we can create more quality content in the future.